Hello, welcome to Rejoin Rants. I'm Peter Corr.
And I'm Lisa Burton. And today our guest is Serena Williams.
What? Serena Williams?
I wish.
Is it?
That was so stupid. It's just because I just said Serena. And the first thing came out was
See that I was like, should I own it?
I could make a good clip.
Oh my God. You know I'm leaving that in.
I was like, oh no, they've got the wrong person.
And today our guest is Katie Serena, an up-and-coming TikTok star. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so I just make kind of rants, I guess, on TikTok, talking about issues that are important to me. It started off talking about abortion rights in the UK and America, and it just kind of went on from there, really. I think there's a lot to talk about at the moment. There's like a new colossal news story almost every day. So yeah, I feel like there's no end of things to discuss, and there's no end of things to get angry about as well, which seems to accidentally have become my niche. But there we go.
Excellent.
We found you because you're going to come on and start doing videos for the NOM TikTok, and I believe you want to get a bit stuck in with campaigning as well for with National Rejoin March, which we're really pleased about. A video that you've got on your channel which stuck out, I don't think it's even a video, I think it's just a photo that says something along the lines of me being kicked out of the front room because I won't stop talking about politics, or some, it says something like that.
Yeah, I know the one you mean.
Is that what it's like at home? Do you talk a lot about politics? Is it just you, the whole family, or?
So yeah, I think me and my dad are both kind of like the same level of obsessed with politics. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, probably a bad thing. But it's got to the point where if we have like kind of wider family come and visit, we do have to kind of like, I do have to get it together. Do you know what I mean? Because I think politics is quite polarizing at the moment, and there are sort of members of the family who don't agree with everything that we say. And yeah, it's kind of knowing when to keep it together. Do you know what I mean?
That's hard. It's hard to do that. I've got mixed family members since Brexit. It's all been a bit, and all my family members particularly think that I'm obsessed and I go on about it too much, and there's better things in the world to do, but there's not. I'm obsessed. So
I'm the same. My family are mostly Brexity and think I'm too obsessed with it. I've brought a couple of them round, actually. My mum and dad sort of have been brought around by my constant going on. So that's me saying, don't give up, Katie. You'll bring them around eventually.
I'll try.
So what got you into creating content in the first place? What made you pick your phone up and make a video?
Well, honestly, I think I was having actually a discussion with my family about abortion rights, because it was just after Farage had proposed shortening the legal abortion term, and I got doing my own research and kind of just felt really angry because the more I was understanding and reading like these published journals by doctors and reading things that midwives themselves had actually said, I began to understand that actually like there is a reason why it's 24 weeks. It's not just come out of nowhere. And to have a politician who doesn't know anything about abortion propose it just to appease these far right groups like these anti-choice, I think it's got Christian in the name. I can't remember the exact name of the organization, but I'm pretty sure they're American as well. And he's just sort of working with them and trying to appease these far right groups with no knowledge of what's good for women or why it's 24 weeks. And it just got me so angry that I just felt like I needed to pick up my phone and just kind of get it out, even if I was speaking to no one, just so I wouldn't kind of keep it bottled in. And yeah, it kind of resonated with a few people. So yeah.
When was that, Kate? Could I ask you? Do you remember roughly how long ago that was?
Either November or December. So really recently, really.
I was quite recently because I've kind of picked it up for a while. It's the American thing. It always spreads, and there's a lot of American money now in UK politics and paying bad actors behind the scenes for this sort of stuff. And I don't know if you remember when the abortion debate was on for Northern Ireland. And that was about 2.5 years ago, I think. And over a third of Tory MPs voted against that, And with what's happening in America, people think that it wouldn't happen in Britain. Mm-hmm. But that is what they will come after. Yeah. That when they get powerful, that is what they will come after. Because I think fundamentally people need to understand that the far right, they only start out with minorities. That's just the scapegoat that they use as a particular minority, and that will escalate. And we've seen it escalate. Maybe started with Muslims because of the terror attacks, a decade or so ago in Europe, and then it goes to all migrants, and it goes to Black people, and it goes to trans people, blah, 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 and then it'll come to women. Mm-hmm. And so, it's you're right to be really concerned about that, because it's in their sights as well, because I think you probably understand that what they mean by no migration is take away the women's rights and force them to breed, so we don't have to bring people in to do the jobs. So that's really interesting. I was wondering what your thoughts were on the Tate brothers ending up in America yesterday.
I think it's disgraceful. As soon as I saw that news story, I wasn't surprised, because I think Tate had actually tweeted something when Trump got inaugurated about how this was great news for the Tate brothers. So I think he had an inkling then that he was going to be welcomed into the US. But what message does that show to women, that we've got these people that have been accused of, how many accounts of human trafficking, sexual assault and rape, and they're being welcomed in by another man who's been convicted of assault. It's what message does that show women who might have been abused and are scared of speaking up or going to the police, that we've got someone who's running the literal, the United States of America, who's a convicted felon, and we've got that same man welcoming other convicted felons who are, have made a career off being misogynists online. It's crazy that this is like what the world we're living in.
It's like Trump's filled the cabinet with people like that, though, hasn't he?
Yeah.
It's almost like he's trying to normalize men who've been accused of rape and serious sexual assault and, to almost normalize himself in some way, I feel. And, well, it's just another attack on women, really, isn't it? That, any woman who speaks up about this is going to be disbelieved, and it's innocent until proven guilty, even though there's the weight of evidence and the amount of people behind it is really telling in itself. Yeah, it's pretty sick stuff, actually. I was surprised that Ron DeSantis, actually, he spoke out about it, because he's not exactly the wokest of people, but he was shocked when he heard that they'd been let into the United States, because the United States has really strict rules around, on immigration visas and stuff like that. Hence, Tommy Robinson, can't get into the US and tried to get in on his mate's passport and got done for trying to illegally enter a country. But it's the fact that someone has waived that process, although they are US citizens as such, but they would still need some sort of deal to come in, and Trump's denying it. So I have no idea what's going on with that. But it's a really worrying time, I think, for minorities and women across the world, and
the scariest thing about the Tate brothers to me is how they appeal to young boys way more than people like Farage or Trump ever have and ever could. And I think it comes from Tate. Was he MMA? Yeah.
Yes.
I think it comes from that. So everyone knows him from that, and he was good at the sport. And lots of young boys and men watched that sport and sort of saw him as a hero. So it comes from that. And that's the scariest bit for me, is how influential he's been on really young kids. You were talking like 13, 14-year-old boys are now taking what he says as gospel and hurting young girls in their own class at school and stuff. And I believe the statistics for violence on women is rocketing up because of men like Tate. So it is really scary. what's going on in the whole thing. What's going on in America at the moment is scary, isn't it? And that's just an extra part of it. We need, I think, you two tell me if I'm wrong, and I will gladly agree with you. But we need an opposite of Tate, and we need an opposite of Farage, and we need an opposite of Trump. So the same kind of, maybe even someone who's come from MMA, who's a champion like Tate was, but the opposite of Tate, to do the opposite of Tate. Do you think that would work?
Maybe I'll have to get training, we'll see. But I think there is a personality, a TikTok personality that I follow called Drew Afualo. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's absolutely massive, and she kind of grew to fame because she does exactly what you just said. She kind of she's been accused of being like the female Tate, even though she's nothing of the sort. She just gets genuinely angry at misogynists, and kind of, if someone says something, like the type of stuff that Andrew Tate would say, she will just respond and just absolutely just rip into them online.
Drew has 9 million followers on social media.
And it's because your message is so profound. You, the internet, they call you the crusader of women. So how did this all happen for you?
First I got fired. And then I started posting on TikTok, and then eventually I started making content like about my own dating experiences. And I started making content basically being really mean to misogynistic men on the internet. And turns out a lot of people like it. So, worked out.
So listen, here they are. Because there's a lot of negativity.
Totally.
There's so much negativity online, in the comments. It gets really ugly. None of us are blind to that. We all see that, right? But you decided to sort of fight back.
Yeah.
What made you want to stand up for yourself and everybody else?
I think that a lot of people that gravitate towards my platform and me is because I validate women's anger and frustration with men. And there are so many women who are just like me. I think that's where community comes in handy. That's what we're really, really good at, is building community and finding kinship amongst each other and relating to each other, whether it's in negative or positive experiences. I don't think you can undersell that at all. But I also think that's the power of a platform that I have, is that until you're ready, you can hide behind me and I'll do it. Like, I'll fight every single one, girl, if that's what it takes. Like,
I love you for that.
And she got massive from doing that. And it kind of was the first time I'd seen like a big female influencer just basically saying, don't take these people seriously and you can defend yourself. And they shouldn't be like the domineering narrative. It should be that women too can, fight back essentially. Why, there needs to be a female figure that says, hang on a minute, like, and put people in their place.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm more thinking of the boys that are being affected, because I think the reason they listen to Andrew Tate, and maybe I'm wrong, tell me if I'm wrong actually, is what did you say her name was? Sorry.
Drew Afualo. Drew
Afualo. So do lots of boys watch her, or would you say it's mainly other girls that watch her?
She's got 8.2 million followers. Wow. That's actually really sad that I know that off by heart. But I feel like she does mostly appeal to women. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing, because it's good to get women to stick up for themselves 100%, but it'd be ideal, wouldn't it? Don't you think, if we could get the boys to just stop bloody doing it in the first place? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think the way we need to do that is to have a male version of her speaking to the boys. Is that really sexist to say that, by the way? Is it?
No, not at all. I think, like, the conversation needs to be male inclusive, absolutely.
100%. We need a lot more male allies to speak up about this stuff, and say how wrong it is. But I know where Peter's coming from. It's like we have all of these charismatic kind of far-right commentaries and Facebook and leaders and stuff like that. And there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of, say, populist left leaders, or people on the left or the liberal progressive side of stuff who really have that emotive way of reaching a lot of people. And Peter and I do like Jimmy the Giant on YouTube. I think he's bloody brilliant. I don't know if you ever watch him, but I think he would be an ideal sort of person who I would point men and young men towards Jimmy the Giant, because he talks about social issues and British culture and its history in a way that really, without telling you these far right are arseholes and this is what they're doing to you, he really just subtly goes through it all, you know, and points it out exactly where it's come from.
I think Jimmy's main thing is that you don't have to, because I think boys are seeing two ways. They say, I can be like Andrew Tate and be a hard man, butch and a proper man, or I can be on the left, and people on the left are perceived as being weak or pussies and stuff like that, right? So Jimmy's saying you can still be tough without being misogynist and without abusing women and without doing this and that. You can still be tough guy. You can still do boxing or whatever without being those things. There are plenty of boxers and MMA stars who are lovely people. Do you know what I mean? And they're still tough in the ring, and you know. And I think that's Jimmy's angle: is you don't have to really be left or right, or you can still be the tough man you want to be without being a misogynist or sexist or racist or all those things. And I think that's a good way to go for young boys.
That's it. We talk about toxic masculinity in society, but toxic masculinity to me is more harmful to men almost than it is to women, because the problem is because of the way society places our gender roles on us and things like that, they don't know what they're meant to be anymore. They haven't had the same messaging as, oh, you can be anything you want when you grow up, and this and that, as I think women have in the past 20 or 30 years, say. And it's still that, don't cry, you've got to be strong. You know, I think that kind of, you've got to fit into this role and that role, and obviously the far right have amplified this kind of thing so much more. And so it's young men are, I think, really struggle. They don't almost have the nod to say it's okay to be anything you like. I think they're just being really corralled at the moment into this because of the media. It's all social media led, of course. I mean, you know, it's very, very worrying, and the polarization between politically now, where we see this growing kind of gap between the way young people vote, which was never there before. It was always kind of around the same, liberal to right, left to right. But now this huge gap is growing. I mean, it might only be 6 or 7%, you know, but that's a big gap in difference of opinion. And that is toxic masculinity from social media just working its way into society. And I just worry with social media the way it is, it's not going to change. And how bad is it going to get, you know? So it's a really worrying time.
Have you seen this sort of toxic masculinity yourself through your life and school and all the rest of it, or?
I think I only started to see it coming through when I was about 17 at school. Before then, I can't pinpoint an exact moment where I saw the kind of rhetoric that Tate is spewing, or, you know, this kind of almost radicalization. I didn't see any of that when I was younger than that. I think it coincided with Trump getting into power for the first time. Maybe that's when it started to grow. But yeah, I do remember that was probably one of the first times where I could start to notice it. But it was only small. It was only like 1 or 2 boys in the year group. But yeah, it's just spiraled. And I do think that you're right. It is completely social media that is to blame for this. And you've got to remember as well what you said about the kind of gap that's growing. We've also got an issue of the increase of men or boys taking their own lives as well. And that kind of reflection of their mental health could also explain why we've got this kind of them turn into these radical beliefs. If they're kind of, if we've got these statistics that are showing that, you know, toxic masculinity is causing men to turn to figures like Andrew Tate. And it's all getting so extreme that the figures are going up of male suicide. I think I've worded that really terribly, but if you know what I mean.
No, you haven't, not at all. And you're right. The numbers are rocketing up for suicide in men and young boys. So you said since you was about 17, you'd have been 17 if I'm right in 2017?
2017, I think, yeah.
2017, because you know I'm going to link it to, don't you?
Yeah, Brexit.
the debate that came before the referendum, during the referendum, and since the referendum skyrocketed polarization in this country into, which I say quite often, two bubbles, the Brexit bubble and the Remain bubble. But within those bubbles, lots of other opinions sort of got stuck in that bubble. And it's become so polarizing that it's hard to break out of the bubble. People do break out of the bubble, and they're the most interesting people to me when I find out someone has come from one side to the other or got out of the bubble and just staying in the middle. I want to speak to a lot of those people, because that's how we find the answers, I think. Because they are people that broke through it.
Brexit was a far right thing. I mean, for me, like Peter knows this, it was before Brexit that I started to kind of get these prickles of kind of like, what the fuck is going on? You know, because I completely recognized language changing within the media. And of course, Facebook really took off in around 2010, 12, and it all coincides around that kind of 212, 213 date. And it started by just being stuff about terrorists, and then it went to Islam, and then it went to migrants. And I just realized the way people were speaking was changing. I visited Scotland, where I'd been living in Spain a few years. I visited Scotland, a very small town. I think it was in 2014. And I was shocked by the language that some people there were using about migrants, when the whole economy and the community relied on migrants because it was such a tourist area. They come to work at the bars and the hotels and stuff like that. And I just knew what was coming. And so I saw Brexit, the run up to Brexit happen. And I'm like, this is a far right project. This is only going to lead to a really bad place. And then Trump came in on the back of it, and I knew, that's it. We're all fucked. This is where we're going. And that's what made me political. It wasn't Brexit itself, although I think it's ridiculous. We lost freedom of movement and coming away from the EU. I mean, and I will fight to get back in to the EU as much as possible. But I really just saw it as a rise of the far right. And I've been shouting about it for years and pissing people off for years. But then you're like, here we are. Here we are, guys.
I think the language is kind of snowballing as well. I mean, if you look at the type of tweets that the official White House Twitter page are putting out, I keep seeing immigrants being described as aliens or illegal aliens. I mean, how did we get here? Do you know what I mean? When did it get this bad?
Exactly. Did you see today the Zelenskyy meeting at the White House with Trump? I mean, it's very fresh. There's still a lot to unpack. I think it was still kind of almost going on when we were recording this. But it was difficult to watch. It was so bad. I mean, Trump and Vance, they were like a tag team of two bullies, just being so disrespectful, you know, about his clothing and everything. I don't know, have you guys seen any of it?
Yeah, I've seen I don't think I've seen the full thing, but I have seen bits from it, and I just thought the way they were speaking to him, criticizing how he, you know, governs his country, and yeah, it was exactly what you said, just two bullies picking on him, and he was just kind of sat there, just, you know, frozen. You've got all the journalists taking photos, and you can just imagine that moment and how he felt, and yeah, it's just disgusting. Yeah, it's awful.
It's awful because he's been fighting a war now for the best part of 3 years, I think, isn't it?
3 years.
And I remember seeing a video right at the start because it came out in the media that he'd actually abandoned the country and went somewhere else. So he put out a video with his top commanders right in the center of Kiev, stood in the streets in the center of Kiev, saying, we're still here, we're not going anywhere, we will fight this war from the ground. And he's been there since that day and hasn't hasn't abandoned the country like many people do. Lots of people get their countries into a war, although he didn't get the country into a war, to be clear. Russia invaded Ukraine. But some leaders get their country into a war and then basically abandon it and do one and go and live on the other side of the world for the rest of their lives in luxury. But he's not doing that at all. He's been on the ground since day one. So then for Trump to come in and suddenly suggest that he started the war and he should give up half the country to end the war, it's crazy to me. And I don't understand why people are even talking about him having to pay anything back. It's normally the aggressor that pays back, isn't it, at the end of a war, not the person who was attacked. So yeah, but I think it's all linked to what we were talking about, toxic masculinity with the likes of Trump, because he wants to be the strong man, doesn't he? So the fact that he's got someone who's clearly stronger than him, probably in every way going, like I think Zelenskyy would definitely beat Trump up in a boxing match, that's for sure. So the fact he's got an actual tough man sat next to him, I think makes him, what's the word, nervous, I guess, or jealous, perhaps.
He admires Trump. I mean, he really, it's like a sycophant. It's a wee bit sick, the way that Trump I was thinking today, there's absolutely zero way he would have treated Putin like that. This condescending tone and this belittling and this kind of, it's just, it was really hard to watch, actually. I think it was absolutely disgusting. But I think this may be a pivotal turning point for Europe and the UK, that it will drive Britain closer to Europe. I think Europe has to almost move away from America. That's impossible militarily, by the way. We're just too, we're too entwined with each other's military operations. I was watching The Rest is Politics yesterday, and Rory Stewart was explaining, like, even the data on the fighter jets that we buy off America, that's not our data, that goes to America, and then that has to be given back to the UK, and we have to buy it, pay for it, and all of this stuff. It's like, the software, to have people on the ground that are American to download it. It's so integrated in every kind of way. It would be very, very difficult. But I think Europe really has to stand up now and kind of work with other countries. And I'm thinking, including, like outside of Europe, Turkey, and maybe the non-Schengen countries like Norway and places like that. But it's really worrying times. But yeah, I think Zelensky's going to be bullied into a deal, but I really hope that doesn't have to come to that.
So with what you just said there, Lisa, with Europe having to step up and come closer, how much attention have you paid to the whole Brexit thing, Kate? Has it just been something in the background, or has that been one of the main things you've thought about and spoke about too?
It's definitely been something that has been a factor. I'd say maybe in light of everything that's going on now, it's kind of becoming more relevant. I think, as you've both said, our relationship with Europe is crucial at the moment. I think this is probably the first time in a while, actually, that the whole world is kind of assessing their relationship with the US and thinking, okay, how can we become less reliant? I mean, as you've said, with the arms and the weapons and the way it's all done, I think it's a massive wake-up call. In the same way that when the war first started with Russia and Ukraine, it was a wake-up call for a lot of countries in Europe that are completely reliant on Russia for their gas. Everyone kind of had to reevaluate that and try and think of how they could become less reliant. I think we've got to do the same, and also simultaneously strengthen our relationship with Europe, which would be a great opportunity for us to get back into the European Union.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. I think it is going to accelerate that for sure, because we're not going to get a deal with the USA. We don't want to deal with the USA, if I'm honest with you. Trump, when he talks about a great deal for both countries, what he really means is a great deal for rich people in America. That's what he really means.
Honestly, when I see, sorry to interrupt, but whenever I see Starmer and Trump, doing this whole thing about special relationship, it just reminds me of that scene in Love Actually. Do you know the one where Hugh Grant, and where he sort of tells him, like, you know, he stands up for Britain.
Mr. President, has it been a good visit?
Very satisfactory indeed. We got what we came for, and our special relationship is still very special.
Prime Minister?
I love that word, relationship. Covers all manner of sins, doesn't it? I fear that this has become a bad relationship. A relationship based on the president taking exactly what he wants and casually ignoring all those things that really matter to Britain. We may be a small country, but we're a great one too. Country of Shakespeare, Churchill, the Beatles, Sean Connery, Harry Potter, David Beckham's right foot, David Beckham's left foot, come to that. And a friend who bullies us is no longer a friend. And since bullies only respond to strength, from now onward, I will be prepared to be much stronger. And the president should be prepared for that.
And it's just like that is actually a little bit of what we need right now. We need Hugh Grant up there.
Yeah, we do. We've been trying to get him to speak at the March for 3 years. I'll play him this clip, and then he might.
Yeah, you should.
But you're right. It looked like that scene out of Love Actually, but then as soon as Starmer got home, Trump was calling Zelenskyy a dictator again, and saying we're not going to be having no trade deal, etc., etc. But we don't want a trade deal anyway, because it's just going to mean higher prices for drugs and stuff for the NHS, which means we already know the NHS is struggling now, let alone if we're paying way more for the drugs from an American deal. It's going to ruin British farming. And I know farmers are getting a bad name at the moment, and it's sort of split, especially in the pro-EU community, on whether to support them or not. But I support them because at the end of the day, they're growing food. We all eat food. We need food. And even if a world war is about to happen, countries sort of close their borders. So we're going to need our homegrown food in this country. So if we just let all the farmers go down the pot because of an American deal, then we're going to starve, aren't we, basically?
Well, I think we should all be grateful for the fact that Trump has come back into power and the Tories are not in power at the same time, because then it would just be so much worse, because they would be licking his arse and pleading for a trade deal. And just to get that headline of a trade deal, they would have just thrown everyone under the bus, whether that be like farmers.
But don't you think that's what Starmer's doing now, though? Do you not think that is what Starmer is doing?
A little bit, but it's not as bad as it would be for the Tories. Because the Tories, I think Starmer would be very careful on a trade deal and a trade negotiation. I don't think he'll go for a free trade deal on food and dairy and all of that. With some free traders, you can just make certain products that are free of tariffs, and that's all it is. You don't have to take everything. But I just don't think that Labour would be bullied into a bad deal with the USA like the Conservatives would. Brexit hurt the farmers, it hurt fishermen, it hurt and I don't think Labour would have done that. It certainly wouldn't have gone for that deal. Although, how do we know Corbyn would have been there? But it's very odd to think that, isn't it? But yeah, so I'm not so sure. But Katie was right at one point that how quickly Europe decoupled from Russian oil was quite phenomenal. And to be fair to Germany, it's part of the reason that they're having such a horrid time financially as well, and that why they went into recession, because they're such a heavy manufacturing industry, and they had to change their whole, basically their whole oil supply, and that had a huge effect over a 1 or 2 year period. But they they successfully did it. They were hugely reliant on Russian oil. I can't remember the figures, but it was about 80%. I mean, it wasn't minor, it was huge. So they've managed to do that. So I think if there's a will, there is a way. And would it be such a bad thing for, Europe? I mean, I don't believe in war, a pacifist, but to be making its own military, equipment and standing on its own 2 feet and stuff like that, I think, we can't rely on America. It's gone. Half the population are radicalized now. So, even the future of America is looking grim, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's just it's dreadful.
We need to build a massive spaceship, and lefties can go off and have their own planet and leave the righties here on this burning planet. And they can do all the climate change they want.
I think Musk has that the other way around, by the way. I think he's going to take the elites to Mars, and we're all going to let it burn on Earth.
As it's ready, we'll take over.
I was going to say I wouldn't get in a spaceship that Musk had made. Specifically not for, if it was for left-wing people especially.
Do you use X, Katie, or you've moved away?
No, I've been off a while now. No.
Yeah,
I don't think it's very healthy.
No, it's not a healthy place. I pop in now and then to have a little look, and it just makes me rage, basically.
I am we're kind of staying on it just for promotional reasons at the moment as NRM. I don't really have my own social media profiles at all, apart from Facebook, because I'm old. Everything else is just NRM stuff, and we're kind of staying on there for promotional reasons. So I do go on there, and you're right, Lisa, within seconds of being on it, you're enraged about something. Normally something Farage has said, or Tice, or Trump, or Elon Musk, or are the Tate brothers back on there yet?
Oh,
if
God.
They're not, they probably are now, aren't they?
God, they've been on. They've been on since ever. I mean, they just have hugely grown on X since Elon Musk reinstated them and put them back on. And I mean, I'm a private account. That's where I went quite a lot. Tommy Robinson, the Tate brothers. All of these nasty figures, as far right figures, and people who say they're out to protect our women and girls when they really only care about crimes committed by brown people. Stuff like that. So. I do still find it's if I want to write something, and I write Cough about the far right, I would go there to kind of have a look around and find out what they're up to. It's not, you don't quite get the same feel from Blue Sky yet. But by the way, I think you should be note, Katie, that I installed TikTok just for you.
Oh, thank you. I've got it.
I've been putting it off for ages. I think I tried it a couple of years ago, actually, and I was like, this is just bombardment. I can't cope with this. And then recently, a few people like Mike Goldsworthy, he's been on TikTok and putting TikTok posts up, but everyone's going, where's the YouTube one for us oldies, And then we found out you were coming on, and Peter's like, on TikTok. Oh, for God's sake, okay. So I am now on TikTok and following two people, NRM and you. It's a start. It's a start. So.
Has TikTok always been a part of your life, Katie, or is it recent when you created your account, you got onto it?
I've had it since 2020, but I've only been posting since like November time. So yeah, I've sort of just been a watcher, I guess.
Yeah. And have you always just seen political content on there, or is that recent?
No, that's definitely recent too. I feel like that, at least it wasn't exclusively political content. It was kind of like a broad range, but I feel like the state of politics at the moment, I don't know if this is just me, but I can't believe when people aren't talking about it. Like, I can't just watch a video of someone, I don't know, doing a make my bed with me video, because I'm just thinking, well, what do you mean? Like, well, how are you not worried about what's going on right now? Do you know what I mean? And I know that's not healthy, but yeah, it was the same when Trump got inaugurated. What was it, like won the election on the 6th of November. And I remember I was traveling at the time. I was at a train station. I was like nearly in tears, and I was looking around like, why is no one upset? Why is everyone just carrying on with their day? And yeah, it feels like that's kind of the way it's been.
This moves us on to, I think, how you got into politics, because you're right, most people don't pay attention. This is why when we're, especially online, when you're in a bubble online and you're seeing stuff going on, you're thinking, how on earth could anyone vote for Donald Trump, for example? The reason is because most people are not really they don't watch the news. They're not paying any attention to the politics. They are just getting on with their sort of day-to-day lives, oblivious to it all, if you like. So all they really think is, well, you've got the Democrats and the Republicans. The Republicans means less tax for me, and I'm quite well off, so I'm going to vote for the Republicans. They're almost paying no attention to the rest of it. And I would say that is most people that are like that. So it's refreshing to see more and more of the young generation actually paying attention to politics. I've got 2 sons. One is heavily into politics and just become a councillor. And my younger one, who's 18, almost 19, is not really interested in it whatsoever, despite the fact that he lives with me, other than he'll come on the marches and have fun and stuff like that. But he's not paying any attention whatsoever to the politics of it all. He's into his music and all that sort of stuff instead. And I was as well when I was young. I didn't really get into politics until the first time I ever paid attention to politics was when I was still in the army, because I was in Germany. So the only connection we really had to home was the newspapers, scarily, when you know now what they actually are like. But I remember sitting there reading stories, especially if it was a story about the army. It was about the time of Kosovo, actually, because there was lots of stories in the newspapers about how Tony Blair was deliberately not getting the right kit for the British Army. I was in the army and worked closely with the stores. And I asked them, I was like, is this true? And I was like, no, I don't know where they're getting that from. And it was at that point I realised that the media aren't really telling you what's going on. They're trying to change your opinion and giving their opinions and trying to bend your minds and saying, we don't want Tony Blair in power. So we're going to say he's doing this wrong, we're doing that wrong, we're doing this wrong, we're doing this wrong. I'm not a Tony Blair fan, by the way. That's an example of what it was like back then. And that's what first got me into politics, because I slowly realised that all the information we were being given by the mainstream media, let's call it, was nonsense. And it was about this time that social media started to happen with, it was internet forums and chat rooms, first of all. You probably are too young to even know what they are, Katie. But that progressed on to like Facebook and all of what we call proper social media now. And I think it has, I don't think social media is the problem. I think humans is the problem. We ruin everything, don't we? So that's where it all started for me. But I know that you say it's because your dad was your dad always political before like you came around even?
Yeah. I think like a condition for him for dating my mum was she couldn't have been Tory. That was just like the condition of them dating, which conveniently wasn't. But yeah, I think sort of I've been born into a very Welsh socialist household. I don't know why Welsh had to come in front of it. And yeah, I've had an interest in politics ever since I can sort of remember. I remember the first election that I was young enough to be around for, when the Tories first got in when I was about 10. And I could sort of see how upset my parents were. And that was when I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to take an interest in this. And it kind of, I'd had preparation to kind of be on the losing side every election because I supported Cardiff City. But it kind of started to get to the point after Brexit and after my first election where I could vote. And, that didn't really go my way either. I think it was quite easy to almost get disenfranchised by it all and think, oh, well, this is rubbish. Nothing's ever going to change. And I almost feel like I had more hope at the last election that things would be better. And then Trump getting in, it's kind of ramped everything back up a bit. And yeah, it's a weird kind of position, I think, being a young person in politics today.
You say something quite interesting there, and that's your Welsh Labour kind of area, because traditionally the valleys where I come from, South Wales valleys, were so Labour. There was parts of it were almost used to be called, there was something like a red something, almost, it was so communist almost, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And in the town where I come from, the Labour Club was the richest club in the UK at one point. So, my grandfather was a miner and stuff like that. But it's probably, I don't know if it's a bit different in Cardiff, Katie, but as you know, the valleys are pretty deprived and very left behind areas since the mines were shut. And the amount of young people, or people, not just young people, I see it on social media, I see it that are moving away from Labour and think that Reform UK and the far right are the answer to their problems. I mean, okay, these communities were persuaded to vote for Brexit to solve their life problems, and now they're being abused and radicalised by the far right. And I see it on my Facebook from people I know and family members. Starmer, Starmer locks people up for saying anything. It's against free speech. Nigel Farage for Prime Minister. And I'm like, what do you do? These people are, and I'm not talking about the wider context. Obviously, there's people who do very well there, but overall, there's huge mental health issues, huge poverty issues, children in poverty, drug, alcohol, all of the issues that come with a deprived, left behind area that's living in poverty. Farage wants to privatise the NHS, cut the social welfare state. It's like that xenophobia of just people who are different is so powerful. The rhetoric I see is probably kind of the worst, I must say, that comes from that area. And is Cardiff the same, or is it better because it's much more diverse? What's your experience there?
Yeah, I think Cardiff's definitely a lot more multicultural and a lot more progressive because of that. I live just on the outskirts of Cardiff, so I'm not right in the centre. But yeah, I am sort of, the school that I went to was quite ethnically diverse as well. So yeah, I definitely think that it did feel like, especially growing up at school, things were tolerant. Do you know what I mean? There wasn't. I don't remember ever witnessing. I mean, obviously, I'm a white woman, so I might just have not witnessed it. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure there's racism everywhere, but I always thought of Cardiff as quite a progressive place, and I would like to think that Cardiff would never go reform, but who knows? I mean, they're rapidly growing as a party, and it is scary.
Yeah,
I think it goes back to what you said a moment ago, Kate. Do you know when you said when the election didn't go your way, it can make you feel disenfranchised and think, well, what's the point then? I've got another 5 years before I get even another vote, probably. So what's the point? And a lot of people do think that. I know Jeremy Corbyn got a lot of young people involved with politics, for example, and then they saw him lose twice. And a lot of those people have vanished now. They've kind of not involved with politics, or they've moved into something specific, such as Black Lives Matter, for example, which isn't really party political. So when it comes to an election, they don't really know who to vote for. That was a bad example, actually, because I can't see Black Lives Matter activists voting reform. Can you? But they do see that, well, Labour's failed me. The Tories, I've never liked them anyway, so they're looking for something else. And I think I've spoken to you about this before, Lisa, but with left and right, a lot of people see it as a straight line with sort of left there and right there, but it's actually more of a horseshoe. So you've got the centre, and then left and right goes round, and the far left and the far right almost meet. You'll find clips of Nigel Farage saying very similar things to Jeremy Corbyn on social issues such as housing, for example, saying we need more council houses. You don't actually say it anymore, and it's frustrating because that's one of the big things we actually do need in this country, lots of council houses. And Farage used to say that, but he doesn't no more. But the far left and the far right do almost meet at the bottom of the circle, but they don't ever quite meet because there's some big gaps there, immigration and racism being two of the main things. So I think it's confusing a lot of people. So they just want something different. So if they're either going to believe someone like Jeremy Corbyn, who says all rich people is the problem, or they'll believe someone like Farage, who say it's all immigrants that's the problem, and they'll just go down a rabbit hole. And social media especially really amplifies that to death, I think, and really causes problems.
I think another thing that really angers me about Reform UK and their policies is they've managed to convince a massive amount of people that the reason for all of their problems, be that financial or social, is trans people, and just kind of created this enemy, which is just a group that are trying to live authentically as themselves and not hurt anybody, and they're kind of being just constantly pummeled in the media, constantly. And you've got what's going on in the US as well, kind of an even worse version. I mean, like, trans people are having their genders deliberately put wrong on their passports. Yeah, it's just crazy. And I do think that is spilling over here, and Reform are kind of capitalizing on that and ramping that up and making that a big issue, because they know that it's going to, unfortunately, get people agreeing with them. There is a really strong anti-trans sentiment in the UK at the moment.
It's disgusting.
There is, yeah, and I think it's all a distraction. I really do think it's a distraction. They're distracted from the reality of. I know I just said that I might have insinuated it was wrong to think this a moment ago, but I actually do think it in reality, which is a lot of racism. For example, Tommy Robinson, we've spoken to someone called Kaylin Robertson who used to produce and make his videos with him. We had him on an earlier podcast, and he says, having spent so much time with him, he doesn't actually believe Tommy Robinson is actually racist or even really cares about Muslims and all those issues. He's doing it to make money. And a lot of the time it's all about money and class. And the racism and the misogynism and all the rest of it is almost a cover, trying to hide that they've got all the money and they don't want to give it to us and share it. That's why they want to privatise the health system and stuff like that and send us back to the 1930s. It's not excusing the misogynism and all the rest of it, by the way. That's definitely real. And you two will know that way more than I will. I do think it's all just an absolute mess at the moment, and I think it's going to take good people like you, Katie, to carry on doing what you're doing, and influence people your age, basically. Does that feel like a bit of pressure?
I'll do my best. I don't know how much they'll listen, but yeah, I'll try. I'll keep shouting about it.
So when are you going to start working on NRM videos? Have you guys discussed this? It's been exciting.
Yeah, so I've been given the login details now. So I've kind of, as of now, really, I've got time to just crack on. I've got a few ideas for some videos. I'll just feel awful if they tank and just do terribly, but I'll do my best.
Oh, you've got to start somewhere, you know, but
yeah, exactly.
like anything, we start to kind of observe a kind of newish topic or really get into it. I'm sure the algorithms will feed you, Katie. Don't worry about that. They really will. I really wish you luck anyway. And
thank you.
Thank you very much for coming on and talking to us. And
thank you so much for having me.
Get me on TikTok. Thanks, Katie. And please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Rejoin.